is no longer stranded. The world is grand. Life is in my hands. Love always helps me move forward. Always cultivate before time fades away. Time passes, blink of an eye. We cannot go back in time. Let's get together and strive forward. Love always helps me move forward. Make my life shine and be the star of life. It's always bright. Love always reminds me to move forward. Time is ticking and slipping away. Love always reminds me to move forward. Winds blow and clouds come and go. Love always reminds me to move forward. Happiness in my hands. Life is so grand. A voice in my heart helps me move forward. Life is no longer stranded. The world is grand. Life is in my hands. Love always helps me move forward. Always cultivate before time fades away. Time passes, blink of an eye. We cannot go back in time. Let's get together, stride forward. Love always helps me move forward. Make my life shine and be the star of life. It's always bright. Love always reminds me to move forward. Time is ticking and slipping away. Love always reminds me to move forward. Winds blow and clouds come and go. Love always reminds me to move forward. Happiness
Hello and welcome to our Super Life Secret Codes online workshop. My name is Ryan Sway, and first I'd like to thank Master Sun for providing us these great tools to improve our lives. I also want to thank our panelists and all the participants from around from around the world. Super Life Secret Codes teaches us how to take control of life using energy management. The book was written as a life manual, focusing on the two codes of love and gratitude. If used properly, these two codes can help us achieve success in every aspect of our lives. Okay, welcome everyone. And again, tonight we will be reading in the Abundance book. So it's the title, When the Source is Connected, Abundance is So Simple. Um, we talk about energy, through Super Life Secret Codes. It's all about energy management. And as we talk about abundance, it kind of should be kind of common knowledge that we have to have a good amount of positive energy in order to get to that point of abundance. So it's extremely important that we manage our energy properly. And I think in one area where a lot of people don't pay attention to it is we don't necessarily protect our energy. In the section we'll be reading, it's talking about, a barrier to negative energy. Master Sun speaks a lot about protecting our hearts and, protecting ourselves from negative energy. Um, when I started a company, I remember the first thing we focused on was build business, build business, build business, right? Just get orders, and that's how you build, that's how you get a startup to become successful. I used to talk to a lot of our money people, accounting, and they would always share more about saving money, managing money better. And for me, I was always more like, don't worry about it. If we sell more, we'll be fine. And as I read and learn more about Super Life Secret Codes, and it talks about protecting ourselves from this negative energy, monitoring ourselves, it kind of makes me go back and reflect on the times when I was running my business, and I did not focus much on that. I really believe just building more, making more sales and whatnot would cover any shortfall of, not managing properly. However, now through Super Life Secret Codes, learning the energy management, and if we do want abundance, we can't have those leaks, and we cannot just take on negative energy as if it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, it's all by like units, right? So if you think of money, it's like dollars in income or generated revenue, and dollars in expenses. So we have to monitor those things, both what's coming in and what's going out, because if we don't, we could lose sight of kind of how things are balanced out. I know in accounting, and Vivian can speak more on this, but there's a balance sheet, right? So at the end of everything, it's supposed to balance. A sales guy would never know what that means because we don't understand that. We just sell, sell. I sold, you buy more, and I sell more. And oftentimes, without having good accountants, if the salespeople ran the business, they would run it to the ground because they would end up selling things they don't have because they don't actually have the money in hand to build what they're about to sell. And so, as we think about our personal energy, you kind of want to have that accountant mindset as well. In addition to, doing all the things that will generate you positive energy, you do have to monitor and protect yourself from negative energy. For some people, that might be quitting a job because that job was, essentially killing them, causing them so much grief and negative energy every day. Sometimes it's a relationship. Sometimes it's a hobby or something that, is on the verge of an addiction. For me, I used to gamble a lot, and it ended up causing me more problems than good. So luckily, I was able to quit that, but some people can't. Um, And so this again comes down to a little bit of accounting. You have to be able to measure all this and monitor it. And when something that's supposed to be good or positive or fun starts to not be at all, ever, then we have to reevaluate. If we don't monitor these things and we just go, 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 most likely we'll fall into survival mode. And then from survival mode, if we don't succeed, you kind of can figure out where the next step goes. We fail. So it's really important that we monitor this energy, both positive and negative. And then ultimately, we have to control and manage our negative energy so that we don't have these leaks. And again, I think this is something a lot of people don't want to focus on because it seems sometimes more interesting or more motivating to build more positive things. So instead of fixing a bad relationship in your life, maybe you push that aside and say, let me just go make 5 more new friends. And that'll be way more positive energy than that one bad friend. But the challenge you may have there is that having that bad friend, you may have a tendency or a leak to attract these people that become bad friends. So great, today you make 5 new good friends, but tomorrow you go right back to your routine. You might be picking up, bad friends, negative energy, and maybe sometimes your positive quickly transfers to negative. So it's really important that we monitor these things and really protect ourselves in terms of our energy. And also, again, something I didn't do in the past too much is pay attention to those negative things or things that are kind of causing leaks and to plug those leaks as soon as possible. Okay, so with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have Amy from Las Vegas, Nevada, and we have Vivian from Walnut, California. Okay, and excuse me, the format is dialogue between master son and a student. So I'll be reading master son section, and if you hear my voice, then you know those are the words of master son. And Vivian and Amy will be reading the student section. So if you hear their voices, you know those are the words of the student. Okay, so Vivian and I will begin.
I will start.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm going to grab something real quick. Be right back. Okay. All right, Vivian, looks like you start.
Yes. Hence, the effort in positioning and the deployment forms our capital.
You are right. Be rational in differentiating whether you are part of the drama or just an outsider. A lot of times when we are being approached by our negative energy, we behave as if we were just an outsider and avoid the problem. If we do this, we shall miss the opportunity to resolve our karma.
If we hold true to the karmic concept, we will be better able to accept ourselves to be part of the drama, right?
Yes, when you are approached by your negative energy, you will have a bad emotion. You should know by now that a bad emotion is caused by the imbalance of positive and negative energy in us. The problem is that you refuse to accept that you are part of the drama and you want to avoid the hassle, but you can't resolve the problem if you are not part of the drama.
I have to confess that I could not differentiate whether I was part of or outside of the drama prior to entering into Superlife Secret Code system. The irony was I often enter into other people's drama.
Let me tell you, whether you are inside or outside, your drama goes on and it never stops. You may refuse to be part of it now, but you still have to face it in the future. Do not distance yourself, just face your present, be the driver instead of being driven. Effective control of this provides opportunities for a wonderful future for yourself.
All right, I understand. I need to face it once and for all.
Yes. Start working from the consequence and trace back to the cause. Because of all the imperfections that took place in the past, you are experiencing the consequence at present. The consequence is just following the karmic mechanism. However, we need to hold a very open and broad mindset. Diligently work on your spiritual enhancement, hold free from complaints, blames, and grudges, and stop all negative emotions. Time is of essence, and if you are not going forward, then you are going backward. Face it, no matter how hard it is, you must persist through, and you will be able to switch your state, and such a switch will not only affect your present, but also your past and future too, eternally.
Start from consequence and then trace back to the cause. I need to digest this.
Have you managed to comprehend everything I said just now? It is very critical.
What master means is that whatever we experience in current life, it is the consequence of the cause created during our past lives, and whatever we are doing during our present life will create consequence to our future lives. Hence, no matter if it is for the past or future, we should just focus on the present, manage it, and resolve all in order to switch our fate, correct?
Excellent.
That is because Master is so good at explaining things and making it really easy to understand for everyone.
Okay, we can pause there. Vivian, would you like to share?
Yes, thanks for letting me read this section. By studying in Super Life Secret Code System, I start understanding the law that the soul is internal and the principle of cause and effect. Then I realized that whether it is the past, present, or future, as long as something has not been brought to completion, the same script in our life will continue to replay. And then to put it simply, it's just like playing a video game. If you don't pass the first level, you cannot move on to the next level. So you have to keep repeating the battles at the first level over and over until you pass it, and then you can successfully advance to the next level. The Super Life Secret Code system is very scientific. Master Sun says that whatever cause you plant, you will receive the corresponding results. This is the concept of input and output. We learned that we should trace the result back to its root cause rather than getting entangled in resisting or complaining about the result itself. Instead, we should look for the root problem in the cause. What we have done in the past is our input, and it produces either good or bad output. As Master Sun says, we must face ourselves, change ourselves in order to perform well in the script of this lifetime. In order to reach this good result, we should follow Master Sun always mention about the 弟子规, which is to reflect ourselves, examine ourselves when problems arise. That's why Master Sun strongly recommends us to study 弟子规, which is an excellent tool for self-adjustment. In the past, I did not understand the cause and effect. I wonder why some bad persons could still live in luxury homes and enjoy a good life. But now, with an understanding of cause and effect, the karma concept, I know that the wealth that does not match one's virtue will eventually have to be returned. It is important to remember it's not that the final judgment does not come, it's just that the timing has not arrived yet. Therefore, I understand accumulating virtue is just a very important input. Just make me thinking back to Master Sun's last week's workshop session. Master Sun mentioned a student who asked a question. At the end of the year, she often felt like extremely busy at work, and then she said she had to train new employees, and she feels so depressed that she even think about suicide. And Master Sun explained that this comes from the internal depletion caused by the pressure at work. And then and the masters also say when one's energy level drops below 50%, it can lead to the depression. There's a very low energy. And then Master Sun shared his own past experience at work as an example. Master Sun told us that the cause we should input is to develop our own ability, skillfulness, and confidence. So this is the input. And then wherever there's a weakness, we should just strengthen it so that we can receive the result of success, which is output. And also yesterday's Master Sun's workshop session, Master Sun said every family has its own challenges. The karmic connection between parents and the children is related to the scripts from past and present lives. While the student mentioned in her dream, she tries to pass a ball to her son, and her son would become sick when her son failed to catch the ball. And the Master Sun reminded her to reflect on whether unresolved issues from the past still remain in her subconsciousness. This is what Master Sun wants the student to remember. The one who tied the knot must untie it. So the student needs to conduct a thorough search within herself. The unhappy stories she once had with her son in the past may carry over to this life. So this is another example in yesterday's workshop talking about the input and output concept. Therefore, everything must begin with ourselves. Then the good result will follow. It's just like by creating positive conditions now, we can delete the negative memories of the past. I'm so grateful to Master Sun's answering the students' questions. Through Master Sun's wise teachings, I understand it's so important to cultivate ourselves diligently. Cultivating produce wisdom, and learn to handle things with proper judgment and balance it. Of course, by cultivating, we can avoid creating obstacles for ourselves. Thank you. This is just my sharing.
Thank you, Vivian, for your sharing. Yeah, you mentioned something, and I think it's really important is the input and output. A lot of times we all hope to have these great results and success and stuff, but I think a lot of people they're not kind of putting forth that effort, the input in. I think in accounting there's a term, or maybe no, I think it's something else, but it's garbage in, garbage out. So I think that's more computer. But yeah, if you put in something not good, the likelihood of the outcome is probably not good as well. So as we manage our energy and go through the things, our day-to-day lives and stuff, we kind of have to ask ourselves, like, what's the quality of life that you're putting out, putting into your input, and then the result is also, what is that result? And if you put in not much effort or bad efforts, let's say negative, and then you expect positive, then I think that's a big misalignment. And a lot of people end up having challenges and creating situations where they blame others and, not really self-improvement. So I think it's important, as, Vivian mentioned, to be aware of all this in order to have a, kind of set a path for improvement. Otherwise, if you just keep doing the same things and you expect a different result, then you're kind of playing with that idea of insanity, because the definition of insanity is to do the same thing expecting a different result. So again, we really have to put in that effort. An area that I've shared a little bit about is I now take lessons for golf, and I realize that to be good at this game, you really have to put in the effort and think about all aspects of it, not just one part. And so I think it really is a part of life too. Today, I was having a conversation with someone, and in golf, when we make mistakes, there's a term that we make, and it says, make a mistake that you can manage, right? And sometimes that's kind of our concession, like, oh, at least this mistake today, this shot is something I can manage, this mistake. Whereas in the past, for me, a lot of the mistakes I made in the golf game was, trying way too, maybe going beyond my skill level, and then the ball's completely gone, literally gone, like in somebody's backyard, all over the place. Whereas now, at least when I make a mistake, maybe it didn't go as far as I wanted. Maybe it's a little right, a little left, but it's still within the scope or the range of an area that you can play. So I think about that in life. Sometimes we say things that we can't take back, right? So that mistake's hard to fix because now we've maybe offended someone else, hurt them, and that's going to take a long time to unfix. I think Vivian was talking about person tying a knot has to untie it. What if you don't even recognize that you're tying a knot? And I talk to certain people, and I feel like their personality, with each word, with each thought that they have, is like twisting themselves into more of a knot until one day they either break or they completely spin around. So like, imagine you twist something, and then when you let it go, it's kind of crazy energy, like, unwinding. And I feel like sometimes that's people. And if you're just unlucky enough to touch that person that creates that person to unwind like that, that's a kind of a blow up. And these are things that I think we do have to monitor. Again, if we don't protect ourselves from negative energy, we twist. One, you may break, or two, you may not be able to hold that tension anymore and explode. And Vivian and Amy have been panelists for long enough. I know some history and stuff, and I think all of us have experienced that moment that sometimes when we break, it's like disastrous, maybe internally and to someone else. But other times when we don't break, we just blow up. It really affects other people negatively and, ourselves as well. So these are all things that I kind of perceive, or I kind of present as sometimes mistakes that are not very manageable. And we need to be under control and have enough positive energy to manage that, so that if we do make a mistake, it's small and manageable. And so, again, we really want to monitor our energy and the things that we do. The good energy, the input, the output, like Vivian shared, I think is extremely important. And I hope that every one of you have the ability and kind of the patience to monitor and make adjustments so that your energy in becomes good energy out. So thank you, Vivian, for reading and sharing. We'll move to the next section, and Amy and I will be reading and sharing. Make it just spotlight here. Ooh. One. Okay, looks like I start. Despite your age, Superlife Secret Codes is beyond time and space. No matter how many years the consequence needs to go back to the past or go forward to the future, as long as you can master and manage the present, you will turn out to be the winner. Be it past, present, or future, respect the force of the universe, and you will not be far from a perfect ending. We are talking in terms of decades, centuries, millennial, and your soul achieves enhancements because of some small deeds you have made, resulting in all your future to be improved. This is really not empty talk.
Master, you just mentioned any small deed will cause improvement to the future. I reckon any people will take this as a myth.
I always use the example of GPS positioning. The you at today can be very different from the you of tomorrow. For example, today you watch a movie and you feel very happy, but tomorrow when you wake up, you feel rather down because the joy from watching the movie has subsided. You will always face different circumstances, causing you the inability to leverage a joyful feeling towards permanent joy.
Yeah, it seems happiness is short-lived. Why is it so? How could we make ourselves happy all the time?
This is a question of the positioning you set for yourself. In what positioning will you be happy? What sort of positioning differentiates your temporary and permanent happiness? You need to be very clear with all these details.
I don't understand, Master.
For example, you are working towards enhancements of body, mind, and soul. How do you define enhancements in your body, mind, and soul?
It must be better than present.
Have you ever noticed one thing? When you stay at a 3-star hotel, you feel this is decent. Then you stay at a 5-star hotel and you feel this is terrific. Why? Because 5-star provides you a higher level of enjoyment, higher standards of offering, and it makes you feel joyful. But let's stop here and ponder. Are all the issues faced in our lives merely issues of 5-star standards?
What Master means is we need to ascertain of our respective staggers of positioning could last us for 20 years only, or if it could last permanently.
Yes, you must also include all future positionings you set for yourself. If you position yourself well, you will not be affected by issues in certain phases, and the theme of your life will be very precise. It will not be cloudy as if you can comprehend at one point but cannot at another time, or you feel good at times but feel down at other times. We only have a very short span to live, and we will end up wasting our lives with any negative feelings or frustrations.
So positioning is very critical. How should I do my positioning? I hope to be an entrepreneur. Is this a form of positioning?
In the past, people talk about setting up goals. Goals are a form of positioning. However, now that you understand our body, mind, and soul are interconnected, you will not set your positioning as brief and shallow as this.
Brief positioning?
The positioning you set works as a prelude to your life. Think about this. If you have become an entrepreneur, will you really be happy? At your last breath, will you go to heaven?
Not necessary.
That is why you should now become clearer on how to set your positioning after we have gone through so many lectures. You should have a better understanding about the necessary cognition and responsibility at each phase and how all these interrelate to your final positioning. For example, if you aspire to be an entrepreneur, how far away are you from achieving this aspiration? Have you laid down the various milestones leading you to achieve this aspiration?
What Master means is that we must not skip all the milestones that lead us to our final positioning, correct?
We must include not only the milestones along the way, but also the corresponding adjustments that are needed. Okay, we can pause here. So this section in regards to positioning, I think is extremely important. As an athlete playing football, let's say, there are 4 quarters in the game, and so that positioning, we know the game's not going to be over till the 4th quarter, and we used to always have a terminology, like 4th quarter. That means that's when it counts. Baseball, they say last inning, but the message behind it is the position is this is when the game really counts. This is the end. If your positioning is 6 months, what happens on day one is not necessarily detrimental to the very end. You can probably recover from a mistake. Now, if you don't have the long-term positioning and you only position yourself like day by day, then it's true. Like today could be terrible, tomorrow could be great, next day, like you have no consistency. You don't really have a baseline to build off of because every day could be slightly different. The weather could change, people can come into your life, people can leave your life. That doesn't help us get to the end game or the end goal. And so that's kind of a bad positioning, and we have to recognize, do we have good positioning or do we have no positioning or do we have bad positioning? Without positioning, I feel like for myself, if you don't like set a goal like a little bit further out, like beyond right now, it's hard to be level-headed because if right now is dictating everything moving forward, we have no guideline. It makes it very difficult. It could be anything. We really have like no control over our emotion. So I think about like times if you talk to people, financially, if they have a 5-year plan and they're in year 3, and year 3 sucks, let's say, all sorts of problems. Well, they can focus on the problems and just live in the problems and probably repeat it, probably exploit it, make it worse than it is. Or they can look at the future and kind of start plugging away for the future, moving no matter what. The thing I find for my own self is if I fall into the pit of worrying about a problem or being in the problem, I really am stuck. And then I'm really like not useful to the people around me, preoccupied. I'm out of commission, basically. I'm consumed. And then I realized in the end, it doesn't really help. You sit there and think of all the reasons why you might have a problem and you have no solution and you haven't moved. And then the worst thing about that is if you continue that as a routine, then you might make the same mistake day in and day out. And before you know it, you're just like kind of dig yourself a hole. Having a position to have, say, a goal, and maybe now you're halfway to the goal and you realize you made a big mistake and you have to make adjustments. Having that position will help force that adjustment. Like I mentioned with golf, when we start, there's a tee box, and that's where you start your first shot, and then there is a hole that the ball is supposed to go in. That gives us direction. That allows me to then decide what club to hit, how far to hit, how many hits do I think it'll take to get me to the hole. And there's a lot of choices in there. Some people start and they hit the ball as hard as they can. And when they hit it right, it goes really far. And then they get on and they may finish that hole in less strokes. However, that same person, and this actually happened to me today, we had a couple guys that could really like just crush the ball. But I noticed that me and my partner, we played from like closer, they played from much further, and they hit the ball really hard. But I found that quite a few times they were in the rocks and the dirt looking for their ball. Because when they make a mistake, like I mentioned earlier, their mistake is not as narrow as mine or my partner, because we are shooting shorter and kind of more controlled each time. So that's our positioning, right? Their positioning as ball goes 300 yards, and if it goes that far and it's off by a little bit at the beginning, you can only imagine what 300 yards later it would look like. Whereas for me, maybe I'm going 200 yards, and if I'm off, it's not as far off as them. So this is a positioning, like what positioning, I know I'm talking about golf and maybe you guys don't golf, but maybe some of you do, but I'll try to present it in a way you have choices. So I had a choice. I can also take out a big club and try to hit it far, but that's not the positioning that I want. The positioning that I want, that's not the result that I want, just to hit the ball far. The goal of all this is to get the ball from the beginning to the end in as few shots as possible. So that's the positioning, right? And then along the way of this big positioning, knowing that ball starts here, goes there, we have other positioning. We have ego. For guys in golf, ego is huge. Everybody wants to hit the ball as farther than the guy next to him. But at the end of the day, like today, the couple guys that I was with talked about that. They hit the ball so far, great first shots, and then in the end, we all finished the same because they had a bunch of bad shots later. So you kind of have to ask yourself in your life, what is your consistency? What is your positioning? Are you a everyday get a little bit of stuff done and then over a month, the accumulation is quite good? Or are you a person, every day making big deals, making big impact to people, and some days you do nothing, but because every other day that when you do things, it's so impactful that, people recognize or people appreciate that. We all have to recognize like what type of positioning we choose for ourselves. I now prefer more stability every day, chugging away or, creating some type of success. Little bits at a time is fine. But I found myself positioned in a marketplace in the real estate market that is more kind of takes a little longer to build. But when you hit the result, it's a much bigger result. And so I have to make a decision if that's the path I want to go. And then you have to ask yourself, do you have the energy to maintain yourself in between those times? And so that, in a lot of cases, in this case, would be like money energy. Do you have enough money energy to wait longer between deals, but then make bigger money when the deal hits? Some people, the answer is no. Some people, the answer is yes. But if your answer is no, but you're going for it, you're going to possibly create problems. So positioning is extremely important. If we don't know what our positioning is, that would be like me being on the golf course saying to my partner, hey, where are we trying to go? Left, right, straight, backwards? Like that would be kind of dangerous if you're a golfer and you don't know where you're supposed to go. So then think about in life, how do we break down each day, each week, each month, each hour? What positioning do you have? What do you want to do? Oftentimes I hear people say they want to help other people. That's great. That's a great positioning. But then when you look at that person and they don't actually help themselves, then you kind of have to ask, how can they help others? Right? If this person is already in their own way struggling and they don't have the energy, the knowledge, or the time, how can they help other people? So that's a positioning that we all have to look at. If you want to help somebody else, how well are you managing your own life? And if you are managing it well, then sure, go ahead and use your resources. But if you aren't, you have to make adjustments. But so many of us, we don't do that. We tend to position ourselves to do something, get something done. And then some people have the position of do whatever it takes. And they exhaust themselves. They hurt themselves. They lose confidence from, lose trust from people even sometimes. All because they didn't maybe follow the big positioning of, the good that they're supposed to bring out. Day-to-day life stuff, positioning. You ask your family, where do you want to go eat? And they say something, and then we comment, oh, but that place, food, the food's not good there. Then the other person says, well, yeah, it is. And you end up having an argument when the positioning was just to go eat dinner. That was the goal. We, want as a family to eat dinner. However, because we don't focus on that positioning, and it's maybe not really a strong position, we get into this argument amongst the family about why one restaurant was good or didn't. People say, but you eat it all the time. How's it not good? And then, somebody might end up saying, well, I'm not in the mood for that. And, but it may take a long argument and whatnot. And so we lose track of our positioning at times. And I would say some of the main culprits for that are like ego, our negative energy. When we don't manage ourselves and focus on the goal, they say keep your eye on the ball. If you don't do that, so many things can get in the way. And if we're not careful, we might even get into a fight, argument, and completely derail ourselves. Not ever, or at least in that situation, not being able to get to the goal, the thing that you positioned for, and everything kind of falls apart. And if that happens just once, we can manage that. But what happens now is a pattern forms, and we start to repeat this over and over, slightly different variations, but same outcome. Want to try to accomplish something good, position to go get something good for our family, our partner, ourselves. And then because of ego and all the distractions, the noise, we get caught up and then we completely ruin things, not get to the goal that we wanted, and then also create more problems. So if you think about that, that's not very efficient. It's not very successful, not a plan for success. And it can, again, cause a lot of repeated problems and negative energy for yourself and for those around you. So I ask all of you in your daily lives, what is your positioning? How do you interact with other people? Do you interact with other people? How do you think they receive you? And based on how you perceive or think that they receive you, does that align with the positioning that you want? So I know there's a lot of people, most of us want to be pleasant, want to make friends, want to help each other, be positive. So we say that, but ask the people around you and ask, am I positive? Am I this? Am I that? Are you the things that you want yourself to be? And this is not something that you get to judge all by yourself. You do need outside people to let you know. And if you're not, make adjustments. Go back to what the positioning is, and then make the adjustments you need to get to the end result of where that positioning will lead you to. So extremely important, I think very often overlooked. And like I shared earlier about my business and stuff, at that time, my positioning said just sell, 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 and that will solve all your problems. What I should have done is position myself in a way to be more efficient and maybe continue to build positive, yes, but look for areas of negative that I can actually reduce or remove. And I think that would have been the balance that I needed to accomplish, the goals that I had sooner rather than later. Okay, so with that, I'd like to now have Amy join back in, and we will be reading from page 209. And it looks like, Amy, you start.
What do corresponding adjustments refer to?
For example, today you have achieved a milestone. This, however, is one step towards achieving your final positioning. You should not relax and allow yourself another 3 years to achieve one more step. Your effort working towards perfecting your life runs 24 hours a day, nonstop. Hence, spiritual practice takes no vacation. You know why?
Because we need to push ourselves forward all the time so that we can continuously achieve our milestone or attain larger goals.
Correct. Doesn't matter if you measure the time using days, seconds, or years, you cannot afford to take a break. Otherwise, you will mess up the rhythm.
We can only take a break when we have achieved the ultimate goal. So what is the ultimate goal of life?
In the language of the universe, our ultimate goal should be sanctity.
Sanctity? This feels so remote and unachievable.
If you have set your mindset to work towards sanctity, your awareness and ability in controlling emotions should be more matured. Next, you can assess how far away you are from achieving sanctity, as you have leveraged on the cause and effect mechanism to create a backdrop of happy life, Your mindset will become broader, and any challenge you encounter will be minor or insignificant.
Well, in that case, I will attain joy and abundance naturally.
Yes, a true practitioner will hold great faith to this belief. Our body is just a shell and will perish after several decades. The mind is the manufacturer of soul. Hence, when you see how these three components function and how they interrelate to each other, you will work harder and strive forward.
Master, I'm confused with one area. Many people have gone through one-on-one consultations with you, gave feedback that their minds have opened up and they're better emotionally. They have received similar advice from someone else before, but they couldn't take it in. But with you, they could. Why is that so?
This has to do with their energy field. Whether this field brings positive energy has to do with their positioning and aspirations.
That's simple?
Okay, we can pause there. Amy, would you like to share?
Sure. This part, spiritual practice, takes no vacation. It's so cool because I really, before Super Life Secret Codes, I don't really understand why is cultivation has to be all the time, and isn't it tiring? But later I understood that if we incorporate the learning into our lives, then it's not a practice anymore. It becomes who we are, and that's the ultimate goal. So Master San always uses the example of, for example, riding a bicycle. When you're first trying to learn it, it's very, very difficult. And people struggle, people fall. But once we picked it up, it becomes part of us. We never have to think second. We can just ride our bicycle. So cultivation is the same way. At the beginning, we're not used to it because these are not the habits we normally have. These are not the concept or the mindset we normally have. So we're trying to fit into this mold or trying to follow. So we have to constantly remind ourselves. So it's a challenge. But once we are, incorporate everything, and it becomes like breathing. We don't even think about it, and we adopt the brand new mindset. And that is what we need to achieve in terms of life transformation. And just the other day, Master Sun's weekly class, he mentioned about their feedbacks about certain volunteers. They would act certain ways in front of people, but behind the scene or behind people, they're very, very different, or they're very nice in front of people, but they're very cold and indifferent to people. And Mr. Sun says that's a big no-no. Just because you act very nice and you're trying to show off and you're trying to get recognition from maybe from Master Sun or from the crowd or from the universe, it's still ultimately not who you are. And the universe knows you very well. Same is Master Sun, because we all have energy, we all have data. People who can see through another person can see your data very, very clearly. Another thing is if we constantly have to pretend, one day we're going to slip, right? So this also reminds me of what I teach my daughter because she's a teenager. And I notice that a lot of the kids these days, when they eat, they put their legs on the chair. And in the Chinese culture, that is a big no-no. That is lack of etiquette. Um, so since my kids were young, I would remind them again and again, you just don't do that. You eat properly, even when you're home, even it's a casual meal, you still have to have manner. And my kids, they used to complain. They say, Mom, why? Why do we have to hold our chopstick correctly and sit straight and no, don't put our legs on a chair? I said, this is why. Because if you do it sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't do it. One day when you go to your friend's house in front of their parents, and when you're so relaxed, you forget you're going to put your legs on the chair. You're going to eat with your loud mouth, and you're going to be lack of etiquette because you're just pretending you don't really got it. So this is exactly what we're doing. We cannot pretend. So back to the title of this chapter, it says, spiritual practice takes no vacation, same as cultivation. Can you imagine we only act certain way in front of people and we go home, we act differently? Or when there are people there, we act certain way. But when we're by ourselves, we're entirely different. Then we have to switch our turn on and turn off our switch. One day we're gonna get confused because it's all acting. It's not natural. So one day we're gonna slip, right? So how about we don't do that? So what Master Sun teaches us, if we can learn it as much as we can, practice on our daily basis, the more we can adopt, the more we can increase our positive energy and do things correctly and have respect for people genuinely and be nice. Be nice all the time, not only to certain people, not only to rich people or people who dress nice, but you're rude to poor people, or only nice to the boss, but very mean to the co-workers or people beneath you. And that is not right because that is not true respect to humans, right? So if we are being selective, then we don't really got it. So in terms of cultivation, is 100% is 365 days. Yeah, 365 days a year and 24 hours a day, always on. So that is the ultimate goal we're trying to achieve. And today we also talked about the positioning, which is so great because before Super Life, I didn't know anything about positioning. I didn't know I could set a positioning like programming in my mind or in my soul. Therefore, I have a goal, and anytime I am not aligned, I know I'm not doing a good job. I know I'm making a mistake. So I set a positioning to be positive. So if I feel bad or I feel sad, I feel upset, I know I am not aligned with positivity. So I have an example. The other day we had, in-laws over, and they brought their friends over. So the ladies were talking, and I complimented my mother-in-law in front of the guests. I said, because we're talking about marriage and relationships, so I said, Mom, I said, you and Dad have a great relationship, and you guys are so good with each other. So therefore, Ryan, her son, learns it from very good examples from you guys. Therefore, he's very nice to me. And in my mind, I thought, okay, so her answer was, yes. My son is a very good guy. We always talked about this. Whoever marry him is very lucky. And that is not the answer I expect. I thought she would reciprocate the compliment and saying something like, yeah, and my son is also very lucky who marries you. That's uh, the answer I expect a person would give. But no, she complimented her son and saying, I'm very lucky. So I was thinking, wah, wah, wah. So but I think the old me will fall into a negativity, like thinking, oh my gosh, how, you're so arrogant, or you brag about your son, or this or that. And but then because I have a different mindset, my goal is a harmonious result. So I'm not going to let things to hurt my feelings, or my feelings doesn't change. So I'm just thinking in my head, oh, okay, yeah, mother-in-law, it's okay, of course. And she loves her son. It's no big deal. And also, and as people get older, they tend to say things certain way, and it's okay. It's totally okay. And I'm open to it. So I feel like, yes, my positioning is positivity, and I'm more flexible with, things that's not what I expect. I can embrace it more. And I used to be very, very more limited, and my mind is very limited. But now, because we learn from Master Sun to open up our heart, open to embrace things, love and gratitude. So we allow things to come and go, and it doesn't really bother. And that is the positioning. So using that and apply it to so many things. And maybe in the past, there's so many topics or issues could bother us, but because we have switched to another platform or another channel, and we told ourselves, hey, I gotta protect my heart and my soul because feeling it's on me. Let's not let, little things or little words affect our mood. It's not worth it. And why am I so vulnerable and fragile with everything, right? So this is part of cultivation. This is part of aging. As we get more mature, we should open up more and be more experienced, become more flexible. And that all stems from a better positioning, positivity, and love and gratitude. And that's my sharing for today.
Thank you, Amy, for your sharing. Yeah, I think what Amy just shared is a good example of positioning. um, it's true. Like even when people with good intentions, I think in the past, I guess I have to say this because she's my wife. No, just kidding. She is a good person, right? But even good people when you're positioned wrong, just think about it. Like if you're positioned where you feel someone is hurting someone you care about, then you can become aggressive to protect that person, right? So I feel like in our day-to-day lives, we do have to check on our positioning because Amy's positioning now this time when she heard, the story she shared was very different. It wasn't I need someone to tell me something good. If you don't tell me something good, then I get mad. Like she doesn't necessarily need that. And actually, a lot of times we don't need that. But our positioning puts us in a place where it's like hands are out. You want something. And today, like I had a workshop and I said, look, if the three of four, there's four of us in the room. I said, if I'm going to throw you guys a ball, all three of you will have a certain positioning, right? You'll probably have your hands up, ready to catch this ball. Now, if I throw you the ball and you have your hand positioned like this, like you're throwing the ball, you're not going to have a good opportunity to catch the ball, right? It's not a good positioning. And also, it's hard for people to read what's going on because you don't even have the ball. You look like you're trying to throw the ball, right? Like imagine that positioning. So we have to ask ourselves again, if our big positioning is to be positive, to have a good life, abundance, right? That's the title of this book. What is our positioning along the way to that big positioning? So that's what I was talking about earlier. There's small positionings that we have to have throughout the day. And for Amy, the big positioning is to have a happy family, everybody, be happy. So the little positioning in that moment is not to take something personal or feel cheated, like you didn't get something, but rather to see the big picture and kind of laugh about it. And it becomes a learning lesson or a story to share later as an example. So that's another thing with Super Life Secret Codes as positioning comes into play. I oftentimes pay a lot more attention to things around me because those could be little stories or experiences to share, lessons to share with everyone that might make a good example or an analogy or again, an example of what we're talking about with Super Life Secret Codes. So as you're working on yourself, improving yourself through Super Life Secret Codes, it again makes a whole lot of sense to monitor ourselves, like Master Sun says, be that GPS. If you make a wrong turn, correct it. If you miss something, fill it back in. So at the end of the day, you can support the positioning you have, whether it's the small position, the small, multiple positions throughout the day, or the big picture positioning or big positioning. If you follow those things and you monitor what those things are and where they're pointing, then you should have a good opportunity to be successful, to be abundant. As I mentioned in golf again, alignment is like the positioning in golf. And this guy I golf was kind of like my second coach. He said there's multiple times that he could see from where he was, my alignment was off, and therefore the ball, when I hit it, didn't go exactly where it should go. But it did go where I was pointed. So ask yourself this. Make sure, or do you monitor yourself closely enough that when you're pointed or positioned wrong, that you can catch it? Because if you don't, you can be positioned wrong, get bad outcomes, and oftentimes blame other people and get frustrated. And the only thing you had to do is adjust yourself a little left, a little right, or whatever the measurement is or direction. And had you have done that, then there would be no issues. So again, positioning is so important. And again, Amy, thank you for sharing your story about proper positioning to not let something, go from haha funny to, boo boo boo, mad, that type of thing. So anyway, I want to thank Vivian and Amy for their reading and sharing. Also want to thank all the participants online. And then last but not least, I want to thank Master Sun for providing us these great tools to improve our lives. Have a great rest of your night in the US and a great rest of your day in Asia. Thank you.